Welcome to Dirt. I'm Alice Feiring, writer.
I'm Pascaline Sommelier, Pascaline Lepeltier, Sommelier, retired. I worked last night.
That's Pascaline Lepeltier. She's exhausted. She's been opening a restaurant forever. Brilliant sommelier, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful taster, and she is ma fille française. Definitely my French daughter. Her real mother does have red hair, and she's my height, so it was bound to happen.
And they get along very well.
So, I want to tell you a little bit. We are writing a book. It'll be out, well, we wrote a book. It's we're doing the edits. It'll be out the summer of 2017. It started out by the name of Dirt, and I think when I last saw it, it came back with the title, The Dirty Guide to Wine. Right.
No addition whatsoever.
Right. So I want to tell you a little bit about how this came about. It was probably an idea that was in the works for, I don't know, let's see, back in the late 90s, there was a restaurant on 2nd Avenue called Mugsy's Chow Chow. And Jimmy, who owns another place now, was really kind of disgusted the way everybody would come in and order Merlot, not knowing what they were doing. They just wanted the Merlot. So he decided he was going to have a Merlot of the week, and it was never Merlot. That probably was one thing that was just lodged into my brain. Then I started developing a certain aversion to hearing people going to bars and restaurants and saying, I want the Malbec. And then I thought, well, what if somebody gave you a Caux from the Loire? Savory, more savory than fruit, not a blueberry in sight, maybe hint of violet. Lean, fascinating. Yeah, they'd probably run screaming, this is not Argentina. Over the years, probably since the mid-90s, people, the general public started viewing the grape as more important than where a wine came from and the soil. Then another thing sort of lodged into my brain. I was at a wonderful restaurant in the north of Alsace, the Bistro de Segued. Sorry about my French, possibly. And the wine list was organized by soil type. So I could say I want to compare granite to sandstone to limestone. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. Fast forward to 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I really wanted to stop writing about wine. And this has not left me, though you should all sign up for my newsletter, The Feiring Line. I got it in. And I was trying to sell a book on a serial killer, honestly. And my agent sent it to someone who said, tell her to stick with wine, that's what she's known for. What we want from Alice Feiring is a book for beginners on wine. And I really got pissed off. Out of everybody, really a beginning book for me on wine, it's going to be like the geekiest book in the world. Nobody will want to read it. It won't be for beginners. I will fail miserably. Then I thought, let me think about this. Okay, I'm going to give you the geekiest book for beginners ever. And it's going to be a book for beginners who want to learn about wine, but they're going to learn about it through soil type. They liked it. Talking to Pascaline, she says, I want to do this with you. I'm like, perfect. Perfect. So it was before she knew. You sure you know what you're going to get into? And quite frankly, I couldn't have done this book without Pascaline. She is a brilliant taster. She is far more analytic than I am. I come with the overall sense of things, and she keeps me honest and digs deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I said, Pascaline, this is a book for beginners, and it's not geology. This is not a geology book. So, but it was a tremendous learning experience. And so here is, I figured, I wrote about natural wine for, it seems like a million years, and now the next thing is to try to get people off of grape. and into place. And yes, grape is really, really super important. But so the way the book is organized, how to taste. You know, basics of wine, glasses, typical stuff. And then it's organized by volcanic, sedimentary, metamorphic. A little bit like 2 pages of geology at most, so you get a sense, and then places that we love that work with the soil type, and the people we love that work with the soil type, and get a little bit of overall difference. So the question is, this whole minerality thing. Let me just, before I hand this over to Pascaline, I want to, the whole idea of minerality, which is a word that we, actually I don't think I use once in the book, is something that has come under fire mostly since 2007 when a bunch of writers and geologists started saying you can't taste soil, you can't, I mean dirt, you can't taste rock. And this idea that you can smell flint and Chablis and you can identify through the soil type is just ridiculous because it just doesn't exist because, well, there you go. So oddly enough, last week Justice Robinson wrote a little piece on this. And from her piece, she wrote, I'm not saying minerals and geology are not important, just that you can't taste them directly is Alex Maltman, a geologist's refrain, although he does admit it's always possible that science is missing something. This is all very tantalizing because those of us who taste thousands of wines a year do perceive various shared characters in wines grown on certain soil types. Schist in particular seem to imbue wines with a refreshing graciness. I actually find that debatable.
No, I like the last part.
Yeah, the last parts. You're right. However potent they are. That's the potent part. Right. Wines grown on sand seem softer and looser textured than those from vineyards rich in clay, for instance. And this is Jansen's talking to, cling to the warm graininess I find in the wines grown on the lava-strewn vineyards of Etna. But perhaps we are kidding ourselves. So I want to hand this over a little bit to Pascaline. And are we kidding ourselves? Or how does the rock underneath the soil somehow affect the way we taste wine?
This is a $1 million question. Thank you, Alice. So I was very excited to participate to that book with Alice because I don't think that book is going to be here to give any answer to anybody, and it's not absolutely the purpose of the book. You may not know, but I'm also a master sommelier, so I studied wine in a very academic way here in the US, and a certain way of tasting and understanding wine. And it's true that when she came to me and said, what about that dirt? Was like, you know what? That makes absolutely sense. The way we are taught as sommelier to understand wine is either by varietal or by administrative delimitation that maybe used to be based on soil. And I thought that it would be extraordinarily important to offer a new vision of how to explore the world of wine, especially with the world of wine becoming more and more expensive, with regions that we didn't have access to years ago and suddenly are popping up in our glass. And I was like, you know, there is that infinite questioning that all of us have when we drink wine, especially when we get into people that really do real work in their vineyard. So the book also starts with, there is a prejudice in this book, which is the only people we're going to talk to is people that do the right farming. There is no ability to talk about a sense of place if you don't talk about the right farming and how the soil has been cultivated. The other kind of statement we made in the book is like, we are not going to say that granite is always going to taste the same. You know, we all know that, and here I'm going to quote Claude Bourguignon, that 96% of the vine we plant comes from the light. Okay, so there is no one single element that makes the wine taste the way it tastes. There is this whole extraordinary interconnection that we call terroir, for better or for worse, which is the plant, the place, the climate, the varietal, the way that the winemaker is handling this vinification, and the way the vigneron, I should say, because I really don't like the word winemaker. I think it's not an appropriate word for what we are trying to express. The vigneron is related to his soil. But me, as a master sommelier, I'm asked during my training and my tests to identify fruit tasting a sense of place in a glass. So there is something happening saying that wine that I'm tasting tastes that Muscadet grown on granite, and I have to blind taste that and to get that this is Muscadet, it's 2011 vintage grown on granite. So this is what I'm asked. So there is something. So instead of saying there is a direct correlation, because this is absolutely stupid to say so, it's extraordinarily complicated, we just decided to say, hey, we love wine, we love to taste wine, let's just try to find another perspective for people that don't know wine to get into that fascinating world, and maybe that fascinating world goes through what we don't see, which is under our feet, which is a type of soil. And how is it so amazing to suddenly say, wow, maybe the granite we have in the certain part of the Muscadet, we can find a connection to what's happening in Galicia, and then we can find a connection to what's happening in Northern Rhone or in the Sierra foothills. And what about tasting this wine, knowing that climate, vinification, winemaking, viticulture, and of course, varietal are going to have also an impact. But just offering a new perspective that I think is taking a lot, at least on my side, on my professional side, for a sommelier, something that hasn't been really considered. We'll dig into that.
Prestige is good, huh?
Yes.
Are you going to try to pour?
Yes, so we have two wines for you to taste. I'm going to show you how to pour one bottle of wine for 120 people with lemon pour. We do that all the time. It's a party trick that I love to do. So we picked two wines from Domaine de l'Écu today because they've been kind of fundamental in my education. He was one of the very first winemakers I met when I was a tiny little girl, like more than 15 years ago. And he has been doing some vineyard cuvée, as you know, in the Muscadet region, with delimitation. With the name of the cuvée is based on the soil type. Okay, so we used to make granite, orthogneiss, and gneiss, and so we had the orthogneiss and the granite to taste for you today from the same vintage. They are made the same way, and I thought it could be just interesting just to try them. Okay, so I don't know if I can do 120 people.
Are you going to pour the granite first?
No, we are going to do the orthogneiss first because the granite is always the one that deserves a little bit more time, is the most tricky.
Okay, so but it'll be reversed since orthogneiss is the metamorphosis.
Yeah, but in terms of tasting right now,
okay.
I would recommend to do orthogneiss.
Yes.
Okay, so that is something that you learn in the book, that orthogneiss is metamorphized from volcanic rock. So where granite we start out with, since it's the core, the molten core of the earth, we end up in metamorphosis at the end of the book. While this is being poured, are there any questions about how the book is organized, about the importance of farming, anything that I can answer instead of Pascaline, so she's like now, huh? I'm finished. I have nothing else to say. That's not exactly true. One of the big difficulties of this book has been, we live in a very, very reductive society. And a lot of the beginner books, a lot of alt books, basically a lot of our politics, basically want to come out with one sensational cause and reaction. And one thing that we actually could not do is to say that you can find this is how you taste for granite. This is how you taste for limestone. But what I'm hoping that you're going to find that, well, let me ask a question. How many people here don't think that soil matters? The kind of soil, the kind of rock, whether it's limestone or basalt. So you're all basically, we're preaching to the converted. Yes?
Wouldn't it be a function of vine age as well, depending on the different layers of soil, or no?
And vine root.
Right.
Rootstock, yeah.
Yeah, and rootstock and all that stuff. I mean, it is just the reason that I organize, and it's really, the book is really about an organizing principle, is because except through farming, it is really the rock beneath that doesn't change. And that is the only constant. It changes so slowly. The climate is going to change, the age of the vine, the farming is going to change, every vintage is going to change. But that is the one thing that we have as our benchmark. Do you want to say a little bit about the way some of the difference in openness and climate? Because actually, when we talk about one thing, so I was going, we'll get back to the question I just asked Pascaline, but so one thing that my publisher really wanted us to do is to quantify it and really had to dig our heels down, because we would be our careers would be over if we basically came along with some grand pronouncements. But there are some things that you can absolutely find. There's absolutely a way that you can taste the chunkiness from a very, very heavy clay soil. And there is this nut inside, but mostly it is about texture, and that is what I would like to talk about. Texture and the deliverance of acidity, perception, vertical, horizontal. Go ahead.
It's a $2 million question. Yeah, so you know, when we soil is something so complicated, and we are really not soil specialists. Now, this is not, we are not scientists, and we don't pretend to be anything but scientists. We read, we interviewed people. I have to say, all the interviews we made with so many winemakers, and we are talking about 100 plus winemakers, like they were also bringing us way more questions than answers, you know, in our thoughts. So one of the things that I think is important that I took from the book and the research is not only the mineral content, you know, and this whole discussion of pH and all that are still being studied, and that we are just at the very, very beginning of the understanding of the relationship between all mycorrhizae are able to interact with soil and the mineral nutrients related to the plant, and how a very tiny, minuscule micrograms of something can affect the way that at the very, very, very end the grape is going to taste. I think that is something that is studied right now, and it's going to probably take years to find correlation. But there is something maybe about texture of soil, there is something, of course, about water retention that is very, very important. There is something about the color of the soil also, and the reverberation and the light coming from the soil that are subject that we need to think about. And in terms of what Alice is talking about texture, it's also something that I think is a huge problem for us as sommelier when we taste, and is a problem more globally about people, the way they taste. The kind of the common way is to taste through aromatics and to taste aromas first, and not to pay as much attention to structure. And what I call structure is the way that the skeleton of the wine is revealed and goes through two very, very important things for us is through acidity and tannin. Okay, when I think about the skeleton of my wine, and it's something I use a lot in my daily job, or when I taste wine one day and taste the same one in barrel, and then I taste the one 2 years after and 4 years after in bottle, I always try to taste the skeleton of my wine. Skeleton will mean acid, alcohol, gas, sugar eventually, sweetness, bitterness, and
Can we go back to gas?
Why?
Because I don't understand it.
Certain wine have some
Like CO2.
CO2, sorry, not gas, like gas, CO2. It's a French word for CO2. And so, like, just to make it simple, if you have a high acid, low tannin wine when it's young and just bottled, you will never have a low acid, high tannin wine in 25 years. The wine is going to remain the same. And that structure of the wine is not really the way we are taught to think about wine. We are more taught, as professionals say, oh, that wine tastes like strawberries, and you get all this amazing blackberry, sugar, chocolate, toffee, mocha bullshit. And there is an impact. And I think what we try to see when we are tasting the wine, if there is a correlation with a certain soil type, maybe linked to the water retention, to the hydric stress, to the way that the light was influencing the photosynthesis of the plants when we were tasting the wine. And I have to say we picked the granite and the autochthonous today, but my palate has been more like grown to learn on schist and limestone because it's where I'm from the Loire and close to Sommelier. So we used to put a picture you saw behind me was a picture that I took at Domaine du Closel in Sommelier when Evelyn was uprooted some old wine. She couldn't keep them; they were too much esca. And so she just dug that, and this is on top of the hill. And I was there when they did it, and we are talking about meters of decomposed slate. And you see it was like slightly broken down because they are a very specific type of slate, and they decompose with a bit of clay. So clay is an extraordinarily important factor everywhere for the wine world. Like clay is a big deal. But when I taste on schist, I always had something in the phenolic of my schist, in the way that there is something with the schist that probably creates a kind of a stress, and the plant just have a figure skin or something like that, and I taste that in the Chenin. I just can't miss Chenin on schist, and I can't miss Chenin on limestone. Like it's becoming really so obvious for me. And just by that tannic structure, that is something, a key factor. So I think the book and what we are trying to say, like there is a part where we say, okay, if you want to discover maybe or kind of explore that type of soil, maybe focus on that type of structure and texture and try to focus on how the acidity is defined, knowing of course acidity depends on the weather, depends on the vintage, and depends on what the winemaker is doing, if it doesn't matter or not, or if you have like a lot of rain and the malic is blah blah blah. But there is still something that we thought we could start to perceive or at least pay attention to on that part. And I would recommend, we are talking about how to have people really get into that. We talked a lot about first starting with white wine and how white was a very interesting way to try to understand that definition, even a little bit more red wine. And that was a very interesting conversation we had about how can we get as much transparency out of what we're going to taste. Yeah, what you want?
Do you want to say something about the wine that was poured?
I think what's going to be like, you should taste this wine,
Taste
and then
it,
you
and
should
then-
taste
okay.
the granite, and then you should try to see what the difference between the two.
Yeah, in a way, actually, I was just thinking about it, that this was a little bit of, the book is a little bit subversive, because nowhere does it really talk about natural wine, does it talk about organic wine, it does talk about organic, but the word natural doesn't really come up at all. And I think that that was not necessarily conscious, but I think more and more we're going for just talking about good wine and our idea of what good wine is, and the word natural might go away, which would not be a bad thing. And more about the soil type. What I really learned from this book, it wasn't necessarily the soil, the rock that is the mother rock underneath the soil that does come up into the topsoil. What is really most important is the texture of the soil, and that is what is really defining the flavors of the wine and the texture of the wine. And like with, it's just the verticality, how easy it is for this grain to go down to the roots. And I just, farming has always been really important to me and the way I taste wine through farming, but I don't think it was ever quite driven home as how important it is until writing this book. So what about the Flint and Chablis? Does anybody believe that? I led you miserably, I'm so sorry. I got into trouble on Twitter a couple of years ago by saying it was just sulfur. Or reduction. A lot of times that kind of Flint nose is reduction. But can we ever smell?
I really believe it's structure and texture first. After the Flint, there's a lot of parameters that we like. It's not. This is why I think the book is really it's just a key to open a new door. It's not the relationship is not as direct, and one of our I think one of the most interesting conversations I had, and unfortunately Alice didn't speak French, and I was very lazy that night, so I didn't translate anything because I was drinking and speaking French and very happy to speak French, was with Jean-Yves Bizot in Burgundy. And I don't know if you know Jean-Yves, he's making wine in Vin de France, and Jean-Yves happens also to be a geologist. It was like the more I look for it, the less I understand. I know there is something. I know there is a correlation, and what you were saying, I can't aromatically say there is a correlation, but there is a structural, a textural thing. So it was a flint in Chablis. There's probably something linked to the pH and the acidity. There's something next to the way that the fermentation is happening. There's probably a link next to a lack of nitrogen. There is a lot of parameters. Can we directly link that to Exogyra biancola, which is a little baby oyster? I can tell you when I pass the MS, if you say oyster shell in your glass, you're probably good. If you say Chablis, like you pass. But is it directly related? No. The way I was recognizing Chablis is like because of the acidity. It's a very, very specific acid that has been kind of tamed down by the way that winemakers were trying to play with the lees and giving a little bit of roundness from that. But the acidity was a striking mark for me for the expression of Chardonnay on cool climate, on this Cumery and Portland soil that are very, very difficult for the vine to grow on. So there is definitely a stress on the vine, and that linked to the acidity for me is very benchmark expressive. But at the same time, I couldn't deny the soil recently because I got blind tested on a very old Dagno from Puy, you know, and like it was really beginning of the 1990s. It was 1992, and I call that Chablis. I call that straight, easy, smell, taste, Chablis. It was Sauvignon Blanc. That happens quite often, and I totally feel, by the way. And he tasted the acidity, and then a little bit that evolution of, I was like, my God, and then yeah, Chablis, Puy, and Vein were very close and the same soil type. So it was there, and I was like, wow, transcendation of one of the most aromatically varietal grape variety. By that, something is happening here that connects these two places, and I was very fascinated by that.
I'm wondering, does anybody here find that they have a preference for a certain kind of soil type? Just find yourselves over the years gravitating to
Schist.
granite. What? Which one?
I like the first one more.
The one.
The one.
Yeah, the first one.
The first one is the first one easier for you to taste, like kind of more appealing, like a bit more.
Yeah, I think there's more going on. This one's a little more subdued. The first one's a little more bright.
Yeah. Yeah. Any type of difference acid-wise or?
I think the first one's more subdued.
Acidity. Yeah, I think it's the same amount of alcohol too. Any other comments on the difference between the two?
The second one is leaner.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always find the Ortoness to be, for me, Ortoness is always for me the one that is the most ready out of all the wine that he and Fred are making. While the Granite is always the one that deserves the more time. Is always super subdued in his youth. Is quite neutral aromatically, and even worse. There is something super special for this wine, and I get that not only with his wine, but also with Jolando and a couple of other guys that have granitic soil. Half of the time, people think the wine is caught. Half of the time. And I can say that because I poured it by the glass. I poured the previous wine by the glass. And there is something with the granitic wine from the Muscadet that I find all over the world, and where people are like, there is something. It's kind of muted, and you get a little bit of, I don't speak about aromatics, but a little bit of seaweedy quality, damping. And I was talking to Guy about that like a year and a half ago, and his frame is how granite expresses itself. It's always for him the one that deserves the most aging. That's why I bought everything I could from 2014. It's a wine that in its youth, you wouldn't bet anything on it. Just that it's a kind of a density core. It's almost a little bit short, and you get a linear acidity. While the autumnness is always broader, open, given, upfront, softer, and you never get that type of aromatic that is super specific of granite. I think for me, they are very two striking example of the same grape. We are in the Landreau, we are not very far apart. Has been organically farmed since the late 70s, biodynamic since like 1992, I think it was 35, 98. Anyway, it's like farmed the same way, close similarity in terms of vine age, same vinification, same everything, and it's constant year in and year off. And I find that it's fascinating. With one of the most neutral white grape. Okay, we didn't pick an aromatic. Melon is a cousin of Chardonnay, is super neutral. And I think this is just mind-blowing to see the difference.
We have another 15 minutes. Yes.
Flint, going to red wine, I find that there's this, not a spark, like spark, obviously you think spark in Flint, but there's like this, you know, like not effervescence, you just have like this pop in your mouth, like there's a cabernet from Loire Valley that's growing in Flint, and it just, you find, you know what I'm talking about, it just has like this pop, like this, you know, it's almost like a little CO2, like a little effervescence, but it's not.
It could actually be a little CO2,
Okay.
depending on. I don't really focus on. And I've never experienced that. I'm just trying to think about who do I know?
Flint,
Red.
red, I think Flint in white as well.
Yeah, I think that
Or
mine
Flint in
was.
Sancerre.
No,
Okay,
that's
that's
what
what
I
it
said.
is. Some type of Sancerre.
But who does Cabernet? Do you know the producer?
Pierre, I'm gonna butcher his name, Pierre Beaumont, and then it's the Tefel, the one with the.
Oh, the Tefel.
There's a lot of sensual.
Yes, it was, yeah. A bit more. So no, but I think that speaks more to the style that Pierre Beaumont makes the wine, and so it is going to have a bit of the trapped CO2 inside, and that's why vinification is very, you know, that's. Oh, sorry. The question was about red wine on Flint, and specifically Gamay from the Turin section of the Loire, where there's not that much.
You get flint a lot when you have limestone, they
Yeah.
are connected. The way that the flint is created derived from sedimentary soil limestone, so where there are a lot of sand and also more like sediment from rivers and from pure limestone.
But so the question is a little bit of CO2 and that little pop that often comes from the style of natural winemaking where there's some trapped CO2 and that is kept in the bottle, which keeps the bottle fresh, especially when there's low to no sulfur. And it's very difficult, actually, one reason that this was so good is we have the same winemaker, the same winemaking technique, and so you can really compare. It is often rather difficult to. I know two people who can blind taste soil pretty damn well. Pedro and Raj, right? But yes, Pascaline, what's the question?
So, you know, Alice is a lot of time in Georgia, and there's a lot of wine with skin contact, white with skin contact. How do you feel about the way that skin influence the texture, and how do you, and can you still feel, because it's something everybody asks me all the time, all the orange wine and skin contact taste the same. Like, first, there is no one type of orange wine, it's very stupid to think this way. But they're like, yeah, they all taste the same wherever they are made. Like, they just taste like the vinification technique, which is a maceration, and then not knowing, understanding that there is a lot of different ways to macerate. How do you feel that when you, with your experience, with that intermission of the skin and the maceration, so we are not talking about direct press anymore, we are talking about really an interaction with that skin and the juice. and what does the juice extract from the skin and eventually the cluster and the pips, do you feel that express more or express less?
Well, going back to talking about how it's much easier to actually sense differences, and it's more transparent in a white wine without skin contact, just because it's more transparent than in a red wine. So when we're talking about skin contact wine, we're just really going back into the realm of trying to suss out where a grape comes from down below or above, as if it were a red wine. So it's really just, it's almost like when you start to drink wine without sulfur, especially with a white wine that you really know that you can blind taste like crazy, like Sauvignon Blanc. And then all of a sudden without sulfur you're forced to pay a very different kind of attention. So like you'd be tasting Chenin from schist as opposed to limestone, and so there's a thickness of the skin more and more of that bitterness, and then you learn to incorporate that into the way you're tasting. The same thing that you would with orange wine. It's just really learning another language, just learning the language of skin contact. All orange wines, all amber wines absolutely do not taste the same. It's like saying all red wine tastes the same. But in Georgia, it's a tiny country with such diverse climate. So you've got the desert and thicker skins in the east, and you've got Loire Valley and more northern climate in the west, where there's not as much skin contact. But when you do have skin contact, the quality of the tannin of the wine is very different. So it just has a little bit more delicacy. It is not it's not as solar. It's not as bitter. It's not as thick.
Yes. What would you recommend to farmers trying to best express the minerality of their soil? I live in service of mycorrhizal fungi, and I'm not sure, if I'm helping. I'm not sure of the relationship between the mycorrhizal fungi and the minerality. They're breaking down the rock, right? That's what they do. So I'm doing a good thing by supporting that. Are there other?
Well, there's, I think that every soil needs to find its own balance, and the idea of constantly working the soil and turning it over is really falling out of favor, out of fashion. And the idea of trying to work your soil as little as possible and keep it as healthy as possible, or let other beneficial plants do the tilling for you, is, but I think it really is just really about listening to your soil, seeing what the drainage is. But definitely, I have this under my eyes here. Like, what form of farming are you doing?
By the man.
So are you tilling often?
Nope.
So, and you're in Vermont, right?
Yep.
And you have very rocky soil, right?
Yeah.
Kathleen?
Well, once again, we are not soil specialists, we just like interaction, but it seems that what we heard everywhere was, first, there is no one kind of soil. Like, it's the obvious thing is like every plot of land where you are is going to have a very, very different need from the human intervention. And what most of the winemaker we talk with were like going to the more and more, I wouldn't say do nothing, but realizing that they just need to be here to help to balance back the biodiversity, and they realize that at the end, when they could reorganize everything to be as healthy as possible, the right beneficial plants and microorganisms on the ground were doing what they were forcing. And the fourth part of the ploughing, which is seems to be a huge problem once again when you talk to Claude Bourguignon about it, is one of its main fights, was to listen back to what the real soil need. And I think the good thing in the biodynamics is a sense of observation more than the sense of direct down intervention of something that at the end very few people master today. So there's very few real understanding of the whole interconnection between the topsoil, all the flora, all the fungi that are on the ground. So it was quite fascinating to listen to a lot of winemakers telling us, we do less and less. Like we had that phase where they had to do more to rebalance, and now they're doing less and less. For the soil work, and for the
Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm really interested to hear either of your professional experience to this. As a somm, like I've acted as a somm for many years in the past, and you talked about connecting to schist yourself, like making that connection. That's a very easy connection for you. For me, when I was a wine baby, I always connected with soils that were effectively high concentrations of crushed oyster shells. And I grew up in Florida for a while, and there was crushed oyster shells everywhere in driveways in the rain and drying. And so I wonder, that's my personal terroir. Have you noticed a demographic or a theme between either sommeliers or perhaps more the wine-enjoying public, not novices, but connecting perhaps to their own personal terroir, making those connections to certain types of soil or things?
I mean, I have two ways of interpreting your question. One is that you're brought up with crushed oyster shells, so you gravitate to that?
Right. I notice it, and it also excites me, but I connected it many times.
That's kind of sweet.
Which is weird. I don't know if that's true for everyone. I wondered if anybody had some kind of thing like that, A, and B, if you notice guests or somms consistently being drawn to a certain type of soil.
Well, I will say there are limestone supremacists. And I would guess that Pascaline is totally a minority by having this affinity for schist. And most because, to quote my friend Jose Pastor, the importer, and I use this quote in the book, when he says, limestone is for rich people, granite is for the people. And I am definitely attracted to granite. There's no doubt about it. I just love, and I actually, it is my opinion, and am I wrong sometimes? But when I think about the regions that I'm drawn to, so the Northern Rhone, Muscadet, Ribera Sacra, granite. Give me Beaujolais, excuse me. So it's and give me Syrah granite. It's beautiful. So going back to granite, so this is a very interesting thing. I have a very, very vivid memory of being in New Hampshire with my parents when I was 6 years old. And we went to a mineralogy museum, and I was really playing with the rocks in the back of the car, and I really was fascinated by the granite. So but I was... and from New York, there's a lot of granite on the street. I don't know. Does anybody else have that?
Do you have granite countertops?
No, I live in a tenement, there's no granite. I like granite, I just like it. But it is interesting about why I do believe that there is something interesting about limestone soils, but I don't know. I don't know exactly why it is, just like it is. One of the most fascinating things about soil that I really drove home that it is not bullshit and soil does matter. I was doing a tasting with Frank Cornelissen in London a few years ago. And we had his wine, we had his grape, and we had his olive oil. And they all had the same finish. And that was profound. And that is and I was already on a basalt kick by that time. And it was just, okay, there's something here. I think we're almost out of time, so we'll take a couple more questions before we get booted out. Hello.
Is that me? Sorry.
That is you.
It's fine. So Pascaline, I was with you last week, and as usual, we had you blind taste the table the whole night. It was kind of like torture. Sign up for it. And I want to thank you so much for what you've done for the Loire Valley.
a serious Chenin problem leads to you, and I can never drink enough Cab Franc. So you poured us a Cab Franc, and we got it after a bit of banging around. But one of the hallmarks for me is always that pyrazine, that sort of green, peppery thing. And I was asking you about was it a carbonic maceration, is it stem? And you pointed out something that I noticed, and this goes back to this whole issue of terroir, that in parts of the Loire Valley, where you're growing Cab Franc over slate,
Schist, yeah.
over schist,
Yeah.
you get that hydric stress.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that, unique to that varietal and that region. And how we recognize this, how we can, as a taster, how we can pick up those cues.
Yeah, so that is, it's a broad question, but yeah, so it's linked to the soil, it's also linked to the Loire, it's linked to a lot of, once again, different parameters, but it's true that the way that the Loire works, on the schist side, which is between Nantes, so Nantes, the western part of the Loire Valley is on volcanic. Okay, it's a base of we have a whole very old mountain, 500 million years old, like the Brittany was volcano. So you get volcanic, and then you have a transition which is roughly Angers, around where I grew up, Anjou, that is schist. A lot of different varieties of schist that are metamorphic soil. And then you go a little bit towards the east, and suddenly you arrive to the sedimentary basin of the Parisian basin, and suddenly is within meters you move from super dark blue with some ray of red of ironing slate, you move to beautiful white and yellow stone that are pure sedimentary. Like, it's striking. You see it, you walk by it, it's like boom, it's here. So it's very interesting because in Saumur and Bourgogne and Chinon, they grow Cabernet Franc a lot. It's a kingdom of Cabernet Franc. And they don't grow it as well in the Anjou for red wine, they make rosé with it. And it took me a little bit of time to understand why. At the very beginning, I was like, why? Because it's warmer in Angers. Angers is warmer, way warmer than it is in Tours or in Saumur because it's closer to the ocean. There is something happening with some hills and some small mountains, like 50 kilometers south of Angers, that kind of block the rain and the cloud influences. They go over the region, they go over the Loire, past Savonier, and then they start to rain. So at the end, Savonier happens to be the warmest side of the Loire Valley. Savonier is super warm. Warm plus on schist that are blue schist with a little bit of iron and a little bit of volcanic salt still. And that combined with warmth and a very difficult water retention in the soil gives the Cabernet Franc a very difficult place to grow. But we also grow Cabernet Sauvignon. And recently I did a little writing on that thing, and we were talking about Savonier, and Savonier after phylloxera, somebody did a study and recommended to plant Cabernet Sauvignon as the most suitable grape for Savonier. So it's super warm. But at the same time it's warm but not enough water. So the Cabernet over there is always had something happening that blocks the maturation and gives a very intense pyrosinic taste. And it's why Anjou red wine from the schist side are always more rustic. You always get that tannic rustic structure, which is not the case where you go to the limestone camp. And where the water retention is very different for a plant like Cabernet that needs to have that water happening. So it's why Cabernet Franc does so well in Saint-Émilion, which is on limestone. And when you go to the Médoc, which is mostly gravel and clay, you do Cabernet Sauvignon, because Cabernet Sauvignon likes that kind of warmer soil that Cabernet Franc doesn't like. So this is history, and I think something that what I took also from the book is we need to pay attention more to history of the grape variety and why something grows somewhere. And we tend to forget a lot, especially because post-phylloxera, a lot of changes happened for commercial reasons, and then post-World War II, more things happened in terms of grape selection. But there is a reason why. Cabernet Franc is on limestone in Saint-Émilion and in Bourgogne, and why we put Cabernet Sauvignon on schist in Anjou, and it's also in the Médoc on gravel. There is a reason why that plant goes on that soil, because there is something happening that makes that plant grow better. And I think at the end is that dirt means that there is an adequation between a plant and a subsoil and a topsoil and a place, and all that makes the plant grow better. And this is what I took from the book. So makes better wine.
Going. Okay.
Time to taste wine now.
Okay, bye.